My name's Eben Newkirk. I'm a fisherman out of Maine. I've been fishing for 20 years and I'm a member of the Maine Coast Community Fishermen's Association.
My name is Brian Pierce, commercial fisherman, gill netter, and I've been doing it for a little over 30 years now.
In the United States, about 80% of the seafood that we eat is consumed in restaurants. And so when COVID hit and all of our restaurants got shut down, overnight we lost the majority of our marketplace.
If people are looking for good quality fish, you know, the best option is to buy it locally.
Some people like to hunt deer, some people like to hunt moose. I like to hunt the fish. I like to try to catch them. I like to try to find, the different points that they hang out on and the times of the year you catch the different stuff.
The next generation is going to be involved in smaller boat ground fishing. They're certainly going to have to diversify and have other fisheries that they can be involved in.
I'm Mary Hudson. I'm sector manager at Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. Fishermen are getting very low prices. It's very variable, so it makes it very difficult for fishermen to go out and not know whether they're going to make money or lose money on a trip. We've had a lot of fishermen that have not been able to go out fishing this year due to the loss of markets. Fishermen Feeding Mainers is a project that is trying to help local fishermen through the COVID process, as well as help the food insecure in Maine. So we are working to get fishermen good prices on the seafood that they're landing locally. And then with that seafood, we are using local processors to cut the fish and then get it to the food insecure through programs like Good Shepherd Food Bank and the local school systems in Maine.
We are going to be having our fishermen go out and catch fish, bring it to shore, process it locally, and then we're going to be donating it into a couple of different local food insecure populations around the state.
Well, I was born into fishing, lobstering. A few boats locally where I'm from, smaller boats that were gill netting. And I got a job on one of them and been at it ever since.
I started fishing when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Every day is a work day. I have traps out as well as groundfish gear. Weather as a small boat fisherman in November and December becomes really unpredictable and bad, and it becomes unsafe to spend 3 or 4 days out there to a time. When you're offshore, you can have huge seas, 15, 20 feet, they'd be going over the wheelhouse of your boat. If it's gonna be a big sea on, I'd rather be on the gill netter. Everyone gets less beat up when you're gill netting than when you're lobstering. His traps are falling down.
So we'll leave at, mid-morning sometime, steam usually for 8 to 10 hours, spend the night, and then haul through the nets the next day, and then do it again and again and again until we're ready to come in. Groundfish gill netting, there's really only about 3 species that make up about 90% of the catch. And that's cod, pollock, and hake.
So buying local is the best way to access seafood. It's really the best choice that you can be making when you want to be doing the best thing for the economy and for the ecosystem. Knowing who's catching your fish is just such a crucial piece of the equation now, right? Like at the core of who these fishermen are, they're producing food, they're feeding their friends and neighbors and fellow Americans.
This is the Shannon Christine, and this is strictly a gill netter.
Basically all there was to be caught gill netting was cod. Restaurants were serving it, and then as regulations tightened up and the fish depleted, other species sort of took over. Monk fishing, you leave your nets out, you haul the nets, clean them out, and then you come in. And the ground fishing, you go out, you set your nets out, and you stay for extended period, maybe 3 or 4 days to a time.
In the fall, we more so go to do the ground fishing. That's when they're all starting to spawn out. Summer months, you can't really do a lot because of the dogfish. So I go lobstering as well as I go ground fishing. Lobster bait became really expensive. So the summer months, it's really hard to make money when there's not much volume around. So I moved more towards trying to go monk fishing to diversify, to change fisheries around and catch different things.
For a long time in our country, we've been having this false narrative exist around, should you eat seafood? How much should you eat? What does it mean? And all the new studies are coming out and showing that we aren't eating enough seafood. The USDA just came out with some new recommendations saying that we should be eating seafood at least twice a week. We should be eating at a younger age, One of the pieces of this project is we're going to be trying to get some local seafood into the school systems, and part of that is because we need our youth eating seafood again. In Maine, we've got local community-based fishermen who wake up at the crack of dawn and are out on the water and supplying the best seafood in the world. And there's a huge disconnect between those who are eating seafood and those who are catching seafood. Since COVID hit, about 40% of the fish that we've been landing in Maine hasn't been sold through the auction. The fish isn't being wasted, but it's not commanding the price that fishermen need in order to survive as small businesses.
The boats that land in Portland are often very small boats. They either take day trips or a few day trips. And that fresh fish goes directly into the local restaurants, both in Portland, around the state, and around New England. And the loss of those restaurants has been a huge impact on the day boat fresh fish that we're landing in Portland. And so a lot of that has to do with overseas markets coming, a lot of fish coming in from places like Iceland, replacing our locally caught fish in local markets.
It's a sector-based system now, so you're allowed to have 40 unlimited days at sea if you have a specific monkfish permit. Before I leave, I would normally put between 8,000 and 10,000 pounds of ice in the boat. I try to put on between 6,000 and 10,000 pounds of fish. So there's a fine line between fresh fish and then all of a sudden your fish are old. So I always try to do short trips so that I have a really nice product and I get paid good for it.
If you have people that care, then the people who are making policy decisions will also care.
Yeah, this is the unloading facility and the auction facility. So, we unload our catch here and it goes on a display auction. But this is the primary spot that we get rid of our fish in Maine.
It's a really nice facility to have to use, and it's nice that all the fish, that we have a couple of processors here and it's all getting dispersed all through right here in southern Maine. Typically, all my fish stays right here in the Northeast. I try to land whenever there's a New York truck coming up, but most of my fish gets dispersed right through here in Portland. It's actually really helpful for the city of Portland to provide the Portland Fish Exchange for the fishermen of Maine. They give the fishermen a place to work on their boats. They give a place for the fishermen to tie their boats up. They cut the meat off of the fish rack, and then they have to skin it too. Typically, it's about a 49–48% yield on the fish.
So the local fishing infrastructure in the state of Maine is top priority for me. I've seen infrastructure 30 years ago up and down the coast, harbors, ports with small fleets of fishing vessels disappear. And basically anybody that's still left into the business fishes out of Portland. So to me, without this, it's pretty much game over. I'm not willing to move or relocate to another state. One of my biggest issues with the fishing industry is the fluctuation in prices. You never know what you're gonna get.
It's really unfortunate, especially at a time when there's a lot of people that are hungry, that we can't get our fishermen paid for our fish.
If I could pick and choose where my fish went, I would certainly choose to help somebody out that otherwise wouldn't have options to get that.
There's a lot of food insecurity from students going into a lot of our school systems. So it's been great to work with the Maine Department of Education on this project to work getting more local seafood into school systems and educating our youth on that industry and also on the healthiness of the seafood is a great opportunity.
I take pride in catching a really nice product because I want to have a nice fish for the people of Maine to eat. And I'm excited that there's people in high school and younger people that are going to be eating what I catch. We have so much imported fish that it's too bad. We have such a resource right here.
COVID isn't going away. Things are getting worse out there when it comes to people being able to access local food, people being able to access good, healthy food.
I think it's really important for kids to eat locally caught fish. It's good to support the fishermen too. That I really enjoy eating what I catch, and I try to bring home some fish every time I go.
Oh yeah, I eat my fish when I bring it home when I go fishing, certainly. Traditionally, hake was used for corning. Corned hake was an old traditional Maine or down east dish. And any way you'd cook a cod or a haddock, it works well.
the opportunity that seafood has just as a culinary piece of the equation, because you can cook it in so many different ways. Groundfish are a group of 16 different species, and each one of them you can cook the same way and has a slightly different flavor profile. Most of the country doesn't have local fishermen. We do. And we should really be taking advantage of that as a state. And we're hoping that the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association can kind of help jumpstart some of those conversations.
Trying to get them to understand and appreciate the fishing industry. It's such a huge piece of what makes Maine Maine. A lot of Mainers actually don't eat seafood from our Gulf of Maine waters. We've got a lot of coastline, there's a lot of inland school systems where people aren't learning to eat seafood and how to cook it and how to prepare it.
So the earlier that we can start having these conversations about where your seafood comes from, why it matters who catches your seafood, and the importance of that as a piece of your diet. And then as you start thinking about how we protect our local infrastructure, how we make good management decisions, how we start to encourage better science, and all the different things that make sure that we have a sustainable fishery out in the Gulf of Maine, you know, it makes people appreciate the fishermen more.
So my daughter Alice is 10 months old now. I have set up now so that I could give her the opportunity to be able to use one of the boats.
I hope there is a next generation, primarily. The way we fish is changing. Used to be smaller operations like me made it a full-time, year-round job. It's not like that anymore. And I'm full-time, and I'm down to about 6 months a year, maybe 7 if I'm lucky, that I can make money and make it worth my while to do this.
Eating local is the best thing that you can do, especially local seafood when it comes to supporting your local economy, but more importantly, supporting your friends and neighbors and the people that we care about around us. But there's more work that needs to be done if we want to make sure that our fleet survives the current pandemic and comes out in a better place on the other side of it.